Hi, my name is Katie, and I'm a branch librarian at the Tyrone Township branch of Kent District Library. I'm going to share with you a few graphic novels. So the first one I have here is an I Can Read comics. This is great because kids can get started with graphic novels at the very beginning levels of reading. So this one happens to be a level 3, which is an independent reader. And so just from those very beginning readers, you get to enjoy this graphic format. So this is about Snail and his friends called Tiny Tales, A Feast for Friends, and this is by Steph Waldo. And this is all about Snail here, who really wants this delicious looking crab apple. So he has to enlist some friends. So great themes of like teamwork in addition to being really accessible for those beginning readers. My next book here is one of a series, Blueberry and Pancakes. Danger on Mount Chaco. So we have Blue, who's a worm, and Berry, who is a frog, and Pancakes, who is a gigantic rabbit. And they decided they are going to enter into a Sunday building contest because they really want to win the trophy. But in order to build the best Sunday, they feel like they must go on an epic quest to Mount Chaco and get the ice cream from the top of Mount Chaco. So it's a really funny, bizarre adventure, really weird characters, really fun. With some just great fun illustrations and a really funny story. Next, I have here, this is The Flower Garden, and this is by Renee Carilla. So this is a book about two girls. This I should mention is in our kind of junior early section. So kids who are reading on their own, but just a little bit out of those very beginning readers. And this is about two little girls here who decide to go plant some flowers in a garden. And while they're just kind of hanging around, taking a little snooze, a fairy comes, sprinkles some magic dust, and all of a sudden they are in a garden, but they have shrunk down. And so you get to see them navigate all the problems of being tiny in a gigantic forest. It's very fun, very cute. The next book I have is one of our junior graphic novels. This is by Dan Gutman, and it is part of the My Weird School series. And this is Get a Grip, We're on a Trip. And this is the first graphic novel in this series. There's a whole bunch of My Weird School books, but this is the first one that's been done in graphic novel form. And this is, I mean, it's everything you love about those books, all of the weird, quirky characters, but it is more highly illustrated. So perfect for fans of that series who want to read some graphics. The next book I have is also in our junior section. And this is called Pause. It's the first one in the series. It's called Gabby Gets It Together. And I read this with my kids and they absolutely loved it. So it's about this girl named Gabby here. She and her two friends at school um, all bond because they love animals. They love them so much. But for different reasons, none of them can have animals. So they decide they will start a dog walking business. Of course, this is a little bit harder than they think, and so there are some growing pains as they start this business and learn about working together as friends. It's a really fun book, really cute, great for fans of like the animal rescue friends. So anyone who's really into animals and friendships will enjoy that. The next book I have is also in our junior graphic novel section. This is Heroes in Training, Zeus and the Thunderbolts of Doom. So this takes place with the central character of a 10-year-old Zeus who's kind of learning how to become king of the gods. So this is very kind of similar feel to the Percy Jackson novels. So anybody who's really into mythology will really like that. Then one of my favorite books that I've read recently that has been a graphic novel is Anne of West Philly. This is by Ivy Noel Weir and illustrated by Maisha Haynes. And this is a retelling of Anne of Green Gables, but in modern day West Philly. And it has all of the amazing, wonderful things about the main character Anne, similar kind of plot to the original story, with this this orphan girl who is full of wonder, who really melts the heart of everyone that she meets. And so I highly, highly recommend this one. It is one of the best retellings of a classic story that I've ever read, and it's just a really neat format. So I highly recommend that one. Then we have Isla to Island, and this is primarily wordless. So this is a little more intense of a graphic novel. This is still a junior graphic novel, but it is about a girl who moves. She's in Cuba just before and then during the revolution. And she is sent to live in New York by herself. Her parents stay in Cuba, and she has to go find her way. One of the things that is really cool about this book is that the beginning of the book has it doesn't have that many words, but everything's written in Spanish. It's very much like what her culture is like, what her home is like, and it's Spanish everywhere. But it's still really, for those that do not speak Spanish, it is still very easy to understand. It's very clear what's going on. So when she is sent to New York, of course she feels so sad, and everything seems so gray compared to Cuba, which is so colorful and full of life, and that's what she remembers as being a younger child. But when she moves to New York and ends up staying with strangers, and everything is different, she doesn't speak the language yet, or at least not fluently. All of the pictures turn gray. Then, as she starts to connect to her world through books, you see little bits of color come in. So gradually you start seeing English words come in, and you start seeing, especially surrounding books, all of this color coming back into her world as she makes her way. A wonderful book, and it really, this one really takes that format and uses it to tell a story in a way that you couldn't without all of those graphics. The two last books that I have right here, um, sorry, I have three books left. This one's another fiction one, then I have a couple of nonfiction. So this is called The Aquanaut, and this is by Dan Santad, who wrote such picture books as Bleakle. And this is gorgeously illustrated, and it's both a heartbreaking and heartwarming tale. It starts out with showing a shipwreck, and there are two brothers who are divers. One of them does not make it out of the shipwreck, and the other one does. And he is told by his brother, please take care of my daughter. Those are kind of the last words. It's very emotional. So his brother goes and takes care of his daughter. So later on, after a few years, we see the daughter is a little bit older. She's still really trying to connect with her uncle, but there's a lot of sadness that is kind of keeping them from really talking to each other regularly and really connecting. And then some talking sea creatures show up in her dad's old diving suit that these creatures found in this shipwreck. So they come onto land as a person. They found her dad's journal, and they're trying to find this amazing place where this researcher was, where he was going to take care of all the creatures, and so they are looking for him, and they really find a way to connect with a daughter, brings the uncle back in, and you'll have to just see how everyone reconnects after this really weird incident with talking sea creatures. So it's a really fun book, but it's also just a really nice book. I do have a couple of nonfiction graphic novels here. This one, very timely, Vaccines. This is a really cool history about what vaccines are about. Talks all about how they work and kind of the history of it. Goes into particularly deadly diseases like smallpox, and goes all the way to modern COVID vaccines, and explains a little bit how they work. Very accessible way, and very heavily illustrated, which really helps get that information across. And my last book for everyone is called Button Pusher. So this is fantastic. It is, I will give a little warning, it does deal with some tough domestic, like family situations. And so it is kind of based, at least loosely, on the author growing up in the 80s and being diagnosed with ADHD. It talks a little bit about his childhood and how they kind of figure that out. But he's also got some kind of explosive family dynamics. So that might be something where parents, you might want to just take a look at it first. But it's a very realistic. It very realistically talks about his struggle because it's based on a true story. It gives a little more information about ADHD. This takes place kind of when it just became known that that was a thing, and that there were all of these kids that could be doing better in school with some treatment for that particular um, executive dysfunction. And so it talks about neurodivergence, divergence. So it just talks about how there are different ways that people think, and how that's okay, and how we just need to learn how to like work with each other. So very positive book in the end, very interesting. I really thought it was just a fascinating kind of history that the author actually went through. And that is what I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me.